Today's discussion is AI and game theory to manipulate or basically work Cornucopias Games. And when I decided to do this subject, I used my limited knowledge about game theory, coming from poker background, and I did some more digging into it. And it's a vast pool of knowledge within game theory. And I just want to say that if you haven't heard of game theory, that's probably like everybody else. Not too many people have heard about game theory, and I just want to read off a couple things. Game theory was developed in 1944 by mathematician John Voigt Neumann and the economist Oscar Morgenstern. So it's been around since 1944, but it became popularized a little bit later in life by John Nash, who the movie was made about, A Beautiful Mind. And game theory is a branch of applied mathematics that studies strategic interactions between different decision-making and decision makers to determine the optimal decision in any given situation. So if that didn't make any sense to you, that's okay. It's a very hard subject. Basically, what it's involved with is you have two factions in a game, like Corn Mafia Guild and we'll use the Knights as another example. Game theory, you have two open game theories. You have you have a zero-sum game, which you want to just annihilate your opponent, which may not be to your advantage, and a non-zero-sum game where you and your opponent work together to have a better outcome than if you were to work separately. So that's one part of game theory. There's many different parts of game theory, and game theory is a mathematical structure. So if you take what you know about your opponent and what you know about yourself, you can come up with a mathematical formula to decide whether or not you're going to have a better outcome than they will. And it's used in business, it's used in governments, it's used in money-making schemes all over the world. One game theory may be to sue another company, because if you sue another company, you may get more publicity than if you were to purchase that publicity for yourself. So that's a game theory, how to go back and forth, how to manipulate the numbers, and how to get the best outcome out of any situation, or how not to lose an outcome. And a game like the one we're going to be playing in Cornucopias is an infinite game. That means a game will keep going on. And there's two types of game. There's a finite game and an infinite game. A finite game would be a game that has an ending, like chess is a finite game. You can play one game of chess and then it's over. And an infinite game is like our metaverse that will continue to go for years and years. So there's different strategies to playing an infinite game than it is to playing a finite game. And the reason I decided to bring up this game theory topic and using artificial intelligence may not have been the best idea I've ever had, because we don't always need artificial intelligence to run game to get the numbers in game theory. That can be done by simple mathematics. But yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, even though game theory has been around for a while, and you call it simple mathematics, it's probably beyond me. Probably the use of AI is going to make that a lot more accessible for people, don't you think?
Well, I do, but when we're talking about the subject of using AI in the game, I had asked a gentleman from another Discord who works with AI, and he uses AI in game theory already to manipulate other types of games. And I asked him the question, can AI be beneficial and can it turn the outcomes of the games if one person is using it or not? And he gave me a paragraph, and I'd like to read you that paragraph. He said, yes, AI can be used to help the help with metaverse business applications. AI can be used to analyze data and make predictions about user behavior in the metaverse. So you can use the mathematics to determine what your opponent is going to do. You know, if I do this, what are they going to do? And you can actually use mathematics to do this. So AI, being that the powerhouse it is, it can predict these things if you put the formulas in correctly. And he also said AI can also be used to automate certain processes within a metaverse, such as managing inventory and resources and providing customer support. Additionally, AI can be used to detect potential security risks in the metaverse and take actions to mitigate them. He goes, and finally, AI can be used to develop virtual agents that can interact with users in the metaverse and provide assistance with tasks or other answering questions, basically what we were talking about last week. So that's where I wanted to go with AI. And I think this is something that both guilds or all guilds should probably use if we all want to make money, I guess, in the metaverse. So I will leave the floor open to Fryler and maybe get some people up here to talk and ask some questions. And I hope we have at least one person that would like to discuss any part of this.
Looks like we got a couple people up here, but before we get to anybody, I just want to say real quick, I found that pretty interesting. It seems like there are several ways that you could use the AI to improve the experience. A lot of my research, I was looking at it from the other lens of, how do we protect ourselves from people who want to use AI to do nefarious things like bot the game. That's one main concern that I have. I feel like in a game where there is a play and earn function, there's going to be that monetary incentive for people to, hack or bot the game, which could be really detrimental to the tokenomics or the whole in-game economy if somebody was really successful with that. When I looked it up, there was a company back in 2021, I believe, was when they did this study. It was an antibody company called Jigger, and they did a study of all of the blockchain games at that time, and they found over 200,000 bots within the economy. And on the higher end of that spectrum, for some of the lesser known games with lesser security, almost 80% of their ecosystem consisted of bots. So I have a big concern about that, and I'm wondering how Cornucopias might be able to counteract those bots or at least keep them out of the game. I know they've done really well with their marketplace so far, which has been another contingency point for other platforms. Their marketplaces get botted really bad, and it makes it not fun for the people that use it because they'll have bots that automatically snipe anything that's listed outside a certain parameter. So if somebody undercuts the floor or mislists, that bot automatically scoops it, and it's not a lot of fun for the people that are actively using the market.
That's a great point to bring up. And I had shown Fryler a video, and we watched some extra videos there about a gentleman who uses AI on different games. He will take apart his mouse and his keyboard and run them in through an AI program, so the computer cannot tell where his mouse or his keyboard is or isn't being used. It's not like you're running a program, running a script in the game. It's nothing like that, like you would do with Call of Duty, running a script so you can see through walls. He's actually using AI to move his mouse and his keyboard to run the whole game. And the AI will learn the game and take the best strategies to beat the game. And I think that's something that we have to be concerned about too.
Definitely, especially in the case of that. One thing that absolutely staggered me, of course, I know AI is way more intelligent than us and has way more potential. But in that case in particular, when he was playing Monopoly, he had the AI play 1 million games. So it learned so much more than we ever could in our lifetime. It would have taken us 1,600 years to play the same number of games. So basically it knows more about Monopoly than anybody who ever lived or ever will, Right. So these systems can learn anything, and, they could play 1 million games and get it all figured out and have all that data.
Right, and the thing with him manipulating other games is that you can train AI to, like I said, use your mouse and do things that we wouldn't think is possible. It's like, well, you have to write a script to do this. Well, yeah, he did write scripts. He did write scripts. He wrote scripts to play. What's that car driving game again? Do you remember the name of that? The Rocket League.
Rocket League.
Yeah, he wrote scripts and used that process with AI to play better than any other player could play.
Right. It's such a complex game too. There's so much to take into account with, velocity and shooting and all that different stuff. It's not just like as simple as Monopoly was.
Right. So, yeah, let's go ahead and open up the floor and see who wants to talk about anything. Anybody gonna raise their hand? If not, I guess Ryler and I can keep talking about it. It is a
We got
tricky
KB.
Yeah, go ahead, KB.
Hey guys, finally managed to make it into one off space. So thanks for bringing me up.
Yeah, man.
Glad to have you.
What I wanted to tackle or talk about is the usage, or what you said in the beginning, that AI might open up game theory to more people. And I want to discuss that because I don't think that will happen, since game theory is a complex topic and it highly depends on the input factors. So you have to understand strategy, player one or player two or whatever, how many you want to analyze. And once you understand that, it's easy to do the analysis itself. So I'm not sure how AI might help there. Maybe someone has an idea.
Well,
That's my thought.
Have you played around with any of those AI platforms and tried prompting them around? Because you can get them to do a lot. I mean, they'll write you code. Maybe you're right that they wouldn't be able to use it in that specific application. I hadn't tried.
Well, when I came up with the subject and started to learn about it, what I had discovered is, like what I was saying before, it may be beneficial for us to learn this game theory as best as we can, because then we can utilize it to make larger profits in certain aspects of the game, and like when you come to a point where John Nash came up with that theory, which was in the A Beautiful Mind. It was called the Nash equilibrium, and the Nash equilibrium is not a basic thing, but it's more basic. It's basically, if we fight against each other, that may not be the best outcome of the game for any of us. That's like the Cold War. When the Cold War was happening, they used game theory in the Cold War to reduce their nuclear missile counts from Russia and America. That was game theory that they used in that, and I found that very interesting. Instead of using game theory to say I can annihilate you and you can annihilate me, they use it in the opposite direction and be like, well, we can reduce our nuclear armament, and we're still at a 0-0, right? Because if you get a +1, then you're up on the player. If you get a -1, then you're down on the player. But when you're in a zero-sum game like that, where, well, if I fire missiles and you fire missiles, then we're in a -1 space because we're both annihilated. So they decided to use the Nash equilibrium to decide, well, if we both reduce our armaments, then we're at 0 and you're at 0, so we both win. So that's the Nash equilibrium. So I think some strategies like that, which you can put down, and actually have there's actually formulas that you can put into that. The Nash equilibrium actually has a formula you can put right into AI, and it'll help you come out with the best outcome. So I don't know if that answered your question, KB, but I'd like to hear.
Yes,
more.
It does. I haven't thought about the fact that you could simply have it analyze all the outcomes and calculate it for you. especially when it comes. I only watched a few videos today about it, or yesterday, and I think it gets really complex once you have this. What is it called? Numerous games or continuous games or something like this.
Yeah, infinite
Where you
games.
have not just one. Yeah, yeah, and this might then get really complicated. And yeah, I think that might be really helpful. So I take back what I said, and I think it might be actually beneficial to use AI on that. And I also agree 100% that in order to be successful, and this is not only, and I will try this out in a few other aspects of my life. To be honest, I will try it. And I think it will be beneficial to use game theory, or at least understand it when it comes to certain business decisions, but maybe also in daily life.
Right. That's one of the points that some of the videos that I had watched on it, because I've been just cramming in as much as I could, because I knew, like I said, I knew about game theory for what from poker, what should be played and what shouldn't be played in certain situations, and you have a mathematical theory to calculate all that stuff. But it's a lot of it is intellect that you gain over the years. One other thing that I wanted to bring up about the Nash equilibrium, since Moody is in here now. Sometimes it doesn't work though. I mean, if you have two intelligent opponents, right? Not saying that either of us is not intelligent, but if you have, say, one opponent is highly intelligent and they're using game theory to help them. Sometimes a wild card can be the person that has no idea what they're doing, because then that's hard to put into game theory. So if you're doing something in a game and then you have one person that comes in and be like, hey, I don't, and he just plays the game any way he feels like, then you can't calculate then that blows the calculations all out of whack, because you think your opponent is as intelligent as you. And if your opponent is not as intelligent as you, then the game theory doesn't work so well. So I just wanted to put that in there. So, like in poker, when you play cards, when you're playing higher stakes and you're up against really good players, game theory works pretty well in your favor. But then if you have a wild card that comes in and sits down and he's drunk and he starts, raising and going all in, it's really hard to use game theory to win over him. But you can use game theory to mitigate your losses. So that's another way that game theory is used too, is to mitigate your losses. And there's I had got into I think you all should watch it if you're interested in running and getting the metaverse up. It's called Game Theory 101. And it's on YouTube, and I think it's 10 or 12 years old, and you can actually buy an accompanying book to it. And I started watching it last night, and I was like, wow, this is really in depth, but it's pretty easy to learn. And then I looked, and there's 86 videos in that series. So it is a large subject. There's many ways of using game theories, and one of them is to help you, one of them is to help you and your partner or your foe, and there's other ways of mitigating your losses in a situation where the outcome is not 0-0, the outcome is negative. So you'd like to keep your outcome at a -1 instead of a -5. If we're using a scale like that. Any other people? Or KB, continue, or anybody? Scruffy.
Looks like we had Scruffy with his hand up.
Yeah, go ahead, Scruff.
Yeah, I may or may not be looking at this right, but first of all, we've only scratched the surface of what AI can do. They're still building, especially when it regards to the blockchain. We don't really even know what all can and can't be done, but the way I look at it, and kind of the way I saw us maybe being able to use it in the future, and I say us, I mean cornucopians, all cornucopians, is you have game theories out there that have been proven to work and models and things like that. You have to train an AI to do what you want it to do. So if we wanted an AI to, say, calculate how many resources we need to be farming, whether it's, how much corn do we need to do versus how much gold mining versus how much this, how much that. You know, and again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't understand this 100% either. But we would take some sort of game theory and apply it to the AI, and possibly be able to run models and see over time, does that yield us the most profit or the least profit or something like that. I almost think that rather than having the AI apply the game theory, you apply the game theory to the AI. Does anybody else see it that way, or am I looking at it backwards?
Well, game theory has to do with opponents. So if you're using, say you're using AI for your farm or whatever like that, say they have it built in, like if I'm growing this much crops, then I have to produce this much water, right? So what will my crop yield be? That's a basic statistical thing. So, when you think about like the Nash equilibrium of negatives and positives, then you can put it into a formula that says, what is the best outcome for my crop yield if I'm using this much water or whatever your finite resource is. So you can come out with a 0-0 instead of a -1 and a +1. Like a +1 would be you win and they lose. So you could say, okay, I won here, but then I lost all my resources here because I overdid it. So you want to come out with a 0-0 sum game. So,
well, essentially, I'm saying we want to be, let's take guilds, for example, because I think that that's a good use case. If we want to outperform the other guilds, then we want to maximize our outputs. And if we maximize our outputs compared to them, then we're winning, right? I mean, again, it also depends on, when you look at it and you're going, what do I consider winning? Do I just consider winning and being very profitable and things going well, or do I consider winning being the top spot? Now, if you look at things like the district rewards at the end of a season, I don't know if there's a way to use game theory to be able to be more efficient than your opponent in trying to utilize the people in your organization to the best of their ability or not. But anyway, I see Moody's got his hand up. I'll let him chime in. Just thoughts.
Yeah, before
Stream of consciousness.
Yeah, before Moody comes up. I'm sorry, Moody. Yeah, well, like I was saying before, there's different ways of looking at this because this is a game, and one of the aspects may be, okay, we want to make this much profit, or we want to do this because this is how we do it, But
yeah,
the game theory could also be like, well, if we worked with them on this situation, kind of like the guild alliance, is it better to work with them? Will we have a better yield over the long haul? So you have to weigh your positives and negatives and your zeros and ones and -1s to discuss whether charging at your opponent by doing this is better than if you both don't charge at all. I don't know. It's kind of hard.
I feel
to
like
understand.
Scruffy
I
has a
understand
good
what you're
point
saying.
too.
Yeah.
I think we'll be able to expand that model beyond just, me versus my opponent. How do I get the edge? Because when it comes to our lands, I'd be really interested to see somebody run through these models. Like, what's going to be more efficient for me, having a bakery on that land? You know what I mean? Like, when to insert, like, I've got to raise crops, I've got to get water. It's costing me this much to be able to make this much as a bakery. Would I make more money as a blacksmith? Would I make more money as a hotel? What have you? I think there'll be lots of different ways to expand that model and use it. Moody, go for it.
Go ahead, Mood.
Hey, I'm kind of worried because can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm on Greenwich Park at the moment. Brilliant, cool. So look, these are two topics that I could dangerously say something because my level of knowledge isn't great.
Well, my knowledge is that's why we're having these discussions. I don't know dick about this either.
Yeah, so my kind of view on this is, I mean, game theory is pretty much modeling, isn't it? Modeling and scenarios, and you run a load of scenarios. You look at what your opponent's likely to do, and you've got a scenario based on a model that responds to that. And I think the AI in this context just speeds that up. You know, and AI can do modeling and run scenarios that are preloaded, and it'll just run a million models and come up with a number of scenarios. So I think really game theory and AI is just, well, AI is going to make game theory quicker to respond to data. Where I think it's going to get really, really strange is when we get into AGI. You know, when we start talking about artificial general intelligence, where that is when I think that kind of throws a spanner in the works on game theory. And it's quite similar to what you said, Stein, about the drunk poker player just raising the pot every time. You know, that's AGI will take game theory, or it will end game theory, in my view. But I don't know a great deal about the subject. But I think AI just makes modeling quicker.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And I don't think it will end game theory, because if somebody is using AI to manipulate the data or what to do whatever to throw a wrench in the you know, at us here or whatever, we can use game theory.
Sorry,
we can use games.
just for clarity, I think AGI will, when machines are learning themselves,
Okay.
I think that will reduce game theory. I think AI will actually support game theory because you'll be able to run more models quicker. But when you've got AGI, when you've got two opponents both using AGI, it kind of throws all those scenarios out the window, doesn't it? That's what I was saying, Stein. Sorry, I might have broken up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that's actually game theory, right there. I mean, you just said it. If you have two AGIs working against or working simultaneously against each other to win a game, then that is game theory. Right there in a bottle. It'd be like, okay, if my AGI does this and my AG does that, will they both come up with the same model? And if they are intelligent enough, they will both come up with the same model, and that means the model will come up the same on here and over here. So if you implement these models, then the models will look at each other and say, this is a 0-0 game, because we're both doing the same thing, because we're both highly intelligent, and we're both going to come up with the same model. So then you do get that 0-0 sum game. It's all game theory.
But in the so I get that with AI that will be the scenario. But with AGI, when the intelligence is learning from previous 0-0 draws, and if the motive of that intelligence is to actually win, that is when it'll start getting really crazy of what these scenarios, because it'll learn, well, I've done this for the last 15 scenarios and it's been a draw, so I need to do something different. And AI hasn't got that capacity.
I feel like looking at the data will be really interesting, like you said. I still found, even in that one about Monopoly, really interesting. The AI did all sorts of crazy stuff on its path to find the best plausible outcome. So that raises a good question to me, though, is what's going to happen? Is it going to be an endless battle, or is it going to end up eventually, like Stein said, 0-0? Both compute to the max and they find the absolute best outcome eventually. Or will one always find a competitive edge?
Right. We're talking about war games here, that movie back in the 80s, right? Playing tic-tac-toe. You know, you're going to come up to any way you look at it, if two opponents are at equal intelligence, they're always going to come up to the same outcome, whether they look at the data and say, I'm going to change something, then the other will respond insane. and it won't be beneficial to anyone to it won't be beneficial to any AGI to manipulate his own data because it's in game theory. It's built on game theory. Anything that has to do with manipulating those numbers is game theory. It's E equals MC squares. It can't be changed. It's built into all mathematics, basically. That's why it's such a difficult subject, and I really wish I had done my due diligence before I said, yeah, let's talk about this because this sounds fun. so yeah, man, it's a difficult thing to grasp and a difficult thing to get your head around. But I don't think I think that you have a scary outcome if we were to go in that direction. But I'm also thinking that we're not there yet, and if both guilds can figure out a way to use AI to help with game theory, it's going to be beneficial to all, without making the game too artificial. If you get what I'm trying to say there, it's because we all want to benefit from this game and play this game and make profit. It's going to be a great game. So I think there's a lot of benefits to at least learning the basics of game theory. And so someone else, come on up.
What you thinking, KB?
Well, actually, three topics. So first, regarding again about the AI analyzing different scenarios, I think that's just a fancy way of using a Monte Carlo simulation of those who are familiar with statistics and tools regarding that. And when and then the question regarding what will be the outcome, I think that when you look at statistics and big numbers, there's always a trend where a line of numbers, let's call them, tend to. So I think the equilibrium will be found between two AGIs because there's only one outcome that is beneficial, and they will find it. So that's my take on that. And the third topic, which is crucial for game theory, the two players are not allowed to talk to each other. And my question now would be, and it's good that Moody is also here. My question now would be, how do we ensure? Let's say we are all good with game theory. Everybody strategized the right way and maximize the benefits. How do we ensure that the community doesn't think that we are building some kind of cartel and talking in the background? And that's why we enabled all the guilds to maximize our gains. Well, one part is the CGA or the Guild Alliance, but still, I think that's also a topic that sooner or later we will have to tackle if we are successful with game theory. That's my take on that. What do others think about that?
I think you got a good take on that. And I just looked up the Monte Carlo simulation, and it is a statistical method of using and approximate the real world behavior of systems such as stock prices, weather patterns, and customer demands. Unlike game theory, Monte Carlo situation do not rely on mathematical models to make predictions. Instead, it uses random numbers and probability distribution to simulate the behavior of a system. Monte Carlo simulations can be used to make decisions for forecasting about the future, such as investing, blah, blah, blah. So that's totally different from game theory.
That is true, but I meant Monte Carlo simulation as I used it in my work life was to simulate an outcome and see where the trend goes to. But having the game theory and having different scenarios and want to play that through 20,000 times and calculate it, then you wouldn't use Monte Carlo simulation per se instead of game theory, but was rather thinking of taking your game theory model that you created and then simulate it via Monte Carlo. But maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe I have to try that. I don't actually program it. Try.
Well,
I'll keep you posted.
You're the physicist of the group.
So. I do get your concept on Monte Carlo and the similarities to game theory, but the game is going to be. I mean, it's in any kind of game. The economy and not just the economy of the coins and the tokens, the economy of the resources, the economy of all that, because that will probably be happening at a patterned rate, like your trees respawn after 45 minutes or something like that. Then those scenarios, those models can actually be really, really accurate. Whereas if the game actually introduced a level of AI on the production of resources, that would make the game theory really, really interesting. And that is where Monte Carlo would be a bit more beneficial, because you haven't got a fixed data set. So it all depends on how the game are going to manage their resource productivity and production rates, because if they're fixed, then scenario and modeling will be pretty straightforward, and AI will just do it really quickly. But if they're not fixed, that'll be a real test for the AI.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be I don't know what kind of randomization they're going to throw in the game. I think they probably do have random items that will pop up at different times, else the game will get pretty boring very quickly.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure when it comes to harvesting resources and stuff, you're going to find those in different locations. So
right, because they will have weather patterns in the game, so that'll be put onto the Monte Carlo's simulations, right? Because if you have weather patterns in the game, it's going to work on your crop yield and all that. So yeah, we got a bunch of stuff. We can maybe next week it'll be the Monte Carlo simulation. We'll have KB as our guest.
He can host it.
I think it would be fascinating, because I haven't heard the last Kopi Cafe yet, but I think they were talking about AI in that one, or it was a couple ago. But if they really do bring AI into the economy, that will really, really make things quite interesting, won't it?
Yeah, that would be really incredible. I think AI is going to be used a lot in games moving forward. Even just in like a simple use case, just having an NPC that doesn't repeat the same phrase over and over would be really exciting to me as a video game player. I'm wondering to what level the team is maybe already implementing game theory to help balance the system. Do you guys think that that's something that they're doing or something that would be beneficial?
There must be a level of it in what they're doing. A lot of work on the economy, and the team knows that the economy will be the make or break of this game. If they mess up some kind of productivity or some kind of like return on investment or something like that, that'll leave big gaps. And I think that's the main reason why they've got gold as a currency in the game, so they can actually cover up some of these mistakes that they're bound to make.
It's a huge game.
I really, really hope that they are investing as much as the impression they're given on the economy, because I think it will be the make or break of this game. Regardless of the artwork and the world, if that economy is stacked where people can manipulate and actually monopolize too easily, it'll ruin the game.
I agree. I think that's a huge point.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. And I think the economist that they have, he's definitely familiar with game theory because it's what's taught. So I'm sure he's using that in some of his calculations on what to do with certain parts of the game. If I do this, will it be a positive or a negative to the game? So I think when they're working with the economy, the economist wants a 0-0 game. He doesn't want a negative one and a positive one, because then that'll give an opponent unfair advantage if they figure out that and manipulate that.
And inflation needs to be really well considered as well, because the danger with a lot of in-game economies, and we've seen this in Axie.
Sorry, if you don't manage inflation, then it can become a complete Ponzi scheme, can't it? So they've got to have some calculations and modelling on the expected growth of the game and what that does to the overall market cap of each asset group and stuff like that. It's a really, I mean, I wish I was clever enough to have that as a job. I think it'd be fascinating, but yeah, inflation is going to be a big problem.
Yeah, it's a good point. Very good point.
Especially when it comes to the value of a land, because I've said this a few times. I think the team have got such high integrity, yeah, and they're selling assets at the moment. And this is what I keep saying to the Knights Guild on, for example, the Skyrunners. And I don't know the utility of a Skyrunner, nor does anyone. And I don't know the value that'll have in the game. But I kind of trust if Rob is selling a Skyrunner for 400 ADA, he will be setting that direction to the economists to say, I need that Skyrunner to hold a value in the future, so I'm not going to get 8,000 people calling me a scammer in 2 years' time when the Skyrunners add no value to a game. So, you know, I've got a lot of trust in the team that they are thinking of that integrity of the assets they're selling now. Otherwise, they're going to have a lot of pissed off people, but I trust them. I think they are doing it.
I agree with that. I know a lot of people are upset that, well, maybe not a lot of people, but a lot of people have been asking, you know, when's staking? When's the next staking going to start? And it's been delayed, as everyone knows at this point, for a little while now. But to me, that's just because they're taking the time to get everything right. And I would much rather them do that, especially with everything that's on the line, with how complex the game is, with everything that they have to balance. I'd really prefer that they take the time and do it right. And like you said, the team has earned a lot of trust, I feel like, from the whole community.
Yeah, and they're also, I'm pretty sure they're thinking, I mean, pissing off investors is one thing, but if you've got those investors who, like us, are going to be playing the game properly, that's a different dynamic and a different balance on return on investment, because there's a lot of people, as we know, who own these assets. As soon as they get to 5x or whatever, they'll sell them. And yet we're trying to build a guild and a community on the revenue and the productivity these assets we're buying now. So it is a fine balance between, and we say this on a lot of our calls, at some point, the people in the space today is going to be the minority, and the majority are going to be the gamers. So it's such an interesting fact. Maybe they could run some Monte Carlo on that, eh?
I don't know. I don't know what we can do, and I don't know what they can do. But I think bringing up these discussions is a very important thing for both guilds or for anybody who's going to be playing the game, and how we're going to think about the game. To get a little bit more in depth with our thinking is going to be beneficial for all, you know, and that's why we came up with the AI and game theory discussion, because I don't know too much about it, and I'm very interested in it. And when I started, like I said, I wanted to just implement game theory because I played poker and I thought it was something interesting, and I think it's something that we could all learn and all benefit from on both sides of the river. Whether it's putting land down in certain areas, do we want to put land next to this person, and is it beneficial to put land next to this person? Is it good for just me, or is it good for both of us? And if it's not good for both of us, then what happens to him? Does he go away and that makes my land worth less? So that wouldn't be beneficial to me. So there's a lot of ways of thinking about different stuff that we may be just scratching the surface of what we want to do.
That's fine. That's a really interesting point on the land placement, right? That land placement could be an absolute game changer for an individual or for a guild. And, you know, they've got to release some more information to be fair on the land placement, because I don't know how far they're going to be in the level of information being shared on the economy and the productivity and all of this. But if that land placement just becomes a potluck, a lottery, then geez, I don't want to be messing around with that, because it could cause mayhem.
Yeah, it could cause mayhem. And, you know,
If I'm not,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, if I'm not mistaken, didn't they plan to do the demo before we even do the land rush, so that at least people with higher rarities would get that advantage for placement?
I don't know what they.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to go through and read through again.
I just know that you know, my little bit of understanding that I have about the game theory, which is the discussion here, there's that. Okay, so if I put my land here, but I don't know what's going on around here, then we can still use that Nash equilibrium to make sure that we mitigate our losses by the limited amount of information that we have. By saying, if I hold on to my land a little bit longer and put it over here, is it more beneficial? Yes or no, negative, positive. And then we can come out with a zero. We want to come out with a 0-0. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about by 0-0, it's in the Nash equilibrium of if your opponent gets 1 and you get 0, or if your opponent gets 1 and you get 0. Basically, there's a game that's called the Prisoner Dilemma, and the Prisoner Dilemma is, if I can remember this correctly without making a mistake, you have two people who are being interrogated, and they give both people the same option. If you confess or if you snitch first, you go free, and the other person that you committed the crime with will get 10 years in jail. But if you both don't say anything, you both are going to get 5 years in jail. But if you both confess, you're going to get 2 years in jail. So what would the best outcome would be? And if you do the calculations, and you put the calculations into a box by negatives, by 10 years, by 5 years, by 0 to 10, and 2 to, what was the other one? 2 to 2 or 5 to 5. You'll come out with, if both people confess, that is the best outcome. So that's like a Nash equilibrium. So that'd help us in the game deciding where we can utilize our spaces by using mathematics to determine if it's a negative or a positive, and what would the best outcome be either way, you know, to mitigate your losses or to gain your losses. And it's something that I'm not a mathematician. We do have a mathematician in here. We have KB. So he's a physicist, so he must know a little bit about math.
I think to Moody's point, though, we do need a lot more of that information to be able to come up with the game theory, you know?
Yeah, to put it into the calculations, absolutely.
What's really interesting, and something we have committed to in the Guilds Alliance, and I really hope we start getting some more guilds in there. You know, it's going to be quite a game of tennis if there's just 2 guilds. But one thing we've committed to is, as soon as at a point of time in the future, we are going to have a really strategic discussion on zones and districts, so we as guilds can actually get a level of footing in target zones. Now, it'll be really interesting if when the information comes out, if there is like a couple of zones and districts in key areas, and the Guilds Alliance are battling. We'll have to use game theory at Einstein for sure, but I'm really pleased that we are looking ahead in the future, that we are going to try and strategically work together so we're not in conflict with land placement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the best thing, like we always saying, knowledge is power. I think if you guys who are in the Guild Alliance, the people who are running it, and you do come up with situations like that, you do look into Nash equilibrium and find out how to put Nash equilibrium into a chart, and then you can actually figure out what your best option would be for both opponents. Or both, I won't say opponents, but both guilds, or if you have, and the good thing about Nash equilibrium is it scales. You could have 100 guilds doing 100 different things, and it's still the same formula. So you could figure out the best outcome for everybody. You know,
I'm just glad KB's in the Guilds Alliance, because this is way above my level of education.
well, I think KB should start talking again. What do you think, KB?
Thanks for having me back. I was thrown out since I put my little one to bed. But yeah, I totally agree. I think maybe I had the wrong. I will think further about that. But I think the land grab is a real good example for where we could or should utilize game theory, or where guilds and gamers who are able to understand it and use it will be the most successful ones, depending on the information we get, of course. And I really hope it will be a grab and not a raffle, because that will be catastrophic. Well, it would drive prices on the secondary up, but it would take us guilds months to establish a stronghold. So I really hope they don't do it this way. So yeah. But still, I think still that the question in the room is, how do we ensure that we don't form some kind of cartel if we all are good at it? But yeah, this aspect maybe.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I don't think working together to help one another and help the game is a cartel. I think if you're working together to destroy other people, then, or other businesses or something like that, that could be detrimental to the game, and that could be considered a cartel or something like that. But if you're working together to both benefit without hurting other players, you can come up with your Nash equilibrium there to figure out what is your best strategy for you two or whoever's in the Guild Alliance to succeed without hurting the game in any way. So I think that's where the mathematics will come in.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that, and I know obviously all of the members of the Guilds Alliance, and not ever having a pint with them or a game of poker, I actually trust everyone in the Guilds Alliance. And the first thing we wrote down in the charter for the Guilds Alliance is to protect the game. I think there's a bigger risk of a community or a drag and drop guild, as I often call it, coming into Cornucopias and just not giving a damn about the game, not giving a damn about the players, and just creating because they've got an established size and a lot of funding. I think that's a big danger. That's probably much more of a bigger danger than our guilds becoming a cartel, because we're holding each other to account anyway. So, but I think the risk is external.
Well,
I think that's a great point.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Riley.
Oh, no, you're good. I was going to say, I think that's a great point. That was one thing I was considering earlier when KB first brought this up was, are we really the danger? I mean, anybody could always join and stuff like that. But then I started thinking like, well, what happens if leadership changed? What happens if, like Moody said, a different guild comes in that's not part of the alliance that puts out a lot of influence? Is there a danger of somebody becoming a centralized entity in the game, kind of? And is there anything in place to stop that from happening besides our good intentions?
It might be happening already, right? If you look at the top 50 wallets on land, we've no idea how many of those wallets are linked to an entity. Yeah, so we don't know whether there's another blockchain guild who is nicely sat in the background, taking all of their profits, all of their investments, all of their VCs, and just buying and buying land, putting it in different wallets, and for whatever reason, it could be happening now. That's why land placement is actually a really big milestone for the establishment of what I call true guilds who are bought into the values of the game. But it could be happening now, and that is a massive risk.
Well, when I was coming up with ideas for this week's Twitter space, I had two. I had the first one I came up with was basically what we're talking about. Will big players take over Cornucopias? And I sent Fryler these so he knows that I'm talking the truth. And then I came up with AI game theory analysis for Cornucopias. And I decided that if big players, after looking at this Nash equilibrium and stuff like that, which we're talking about today, it would be beneficial to talk about this before we talk about the big game players, because the more knowledge we have about this and how to use the Nash equilibrium and how to use game theory to mitigate our losses over a large entity was more important to talk about that, to gain some knowledge before we dive into the other Twitter space. Will big players take over Cornucopias? Because then we would have to talk and backtrack. So I figured I would throw this one out here first. And when I talked to Fryler about it, this is why I came up with the idea to talk about this and to have the knowledge, so we're not going to be so terrified if something like that happens. Because if we know the mathematics of it and the theory behind it, then we can protect ourselves instead of having a 5-5 game. We can mitigate that down to a 1 and a -1 game to mitigate our losses.
There's one variable which I don't think any of the guilds can control, but I actually think the external players have got a lot more control over, and that is the player base. So all of our assets and all of our goodwill and all of our collaboration and all of our talking about, minimizing losses, all of our assets need players, and that is a massive variable that we've got at the moment. And and like I said, there could be an external game out there on a different blockchain that has got a community of 30,000, 40,000 people. If they turn up with that many players, all of our assets will, that is a massive variable that we need to really start thinking about, is players.
Well, if say we own so much land, just hypothetical, say we have so much land in each guild and we don't have enough of our own players to work it or something like that. Will it be beneficial to have these big players come in? How can we use these formulas and mathematics to come up with a better plan to utilize these big players to make us a large amount of profit, or a large, I'm gonna go with that, profit. Let's speak the truth, right? So,
will big players be able to catch a foothold in this first land release? I'm definitely thinking in the future they might have a better opportunity, but and again, we need some more information about how this is going to go down. But if all of us guilds are orchestrating and putting our lands in the same area, and we're coordinating with the knights so that they build strong communities and we're building strong districts, is that going to leave a pigeonhole for anybody else to come in there and squeeze in? Or are we just going to be dominating Solace in the beginning theme zones?
Let's do some basic maths, okay? So we've got a little bot, which I think Lava developed in our guild, and we've read all of the registered wallets in the Knights Guild, and I think, including the guild bank, I think we've got around about 1,500 land plots. And let's just say the Mafia, and I'm not saying about the guild, I'm saying within our membership, we've got about 1,500 land plots. And let's just say that the Mafia have got the same. So between the two established guilds at the moment, that's 3,000 land plots. How many land plots in total is it? Is it something like 36,000? What's the number? Does anyone know? KB will know this.
I don't know what it is. I don't know.
Me neither, but I think 36 rings a bell.
Yeah,
Let's go
I
this
think
way.
about 36,000. So the two established guilds at the moment, with our current membership, and if we put all of that land into one plot, we own 10%. Sorry, that's a really bad word to use. We can influence 10%. That is not a safe position if you've got someone from Axie Infinity with a big bag of $1 million US to come in and buy. I mean, how much would $1 million US buy? It'd buy out the rest of that land, probably. So this is why. I mean, so I shouldn't be saying this, but I personally think, and it's part of the Knights Guild strategy, which we've not gone public with yet, but I think it's really relevant for this conversation, and I don't mind sharing it with the mafia. I think the guilds need more land. The current guilds we've got today need more land assets. And we're looking at how we can do that as a guild, because 10% isn't a lot. And if one of those Axie Infinity guilds with 30,000 players come in and buy 30% of that land with 30,000 players off the bat, our game theory is in a very defensive position rather than a protecting the game position. We'll be fighting for survival rather than trying to hold the value of a game, because the balance would have tipped.
Well, you have a good point there, but there's all when you were saying that you weren't sure whether you should put out that information, and this is getting a little bit off subject because I'm really not sure how to retort what you just said. But
only because we've not formally announced anything to the guild yet. There's been discussions about it. I just would prefer the Knights Guild to have a much clearer understanding of the next steps. They do know, but we've not formally announced anything yet. That's all I was worried about, Stein. I wasn't being in any way snidey.
No.
I'd just rather my guild here before a Twitter space. But it's really relevant for this space.
Well, my guild, our guild, the guild, our guild. When I could have, when I was thinking about this mathematics and all this stuff, and I was like, I should, really, maybe I should just share this information with my guild, because then that would make our guild more powerful. But then, as I read it and watched the videos of it, it's not beneficial for my guild just to have this information, because we're not playing a finite game. And a finite game, if we were playing a finite game, then I would only want to have our guild know this information, or to at least look into it further. We're playing an infinite game, and with an infinite game, you want an equal opponents to make the right decisions to better future the longevity of your guild or your playing strategy. So to have unknowledgeable guilds is probably a little bit more detrimental if we're going to be using
definitely we're not going to be able to.
You're not going to be able to calculate what they're going to do.
Yeah, we won't be able to stand up to the threat that Moody's talking about either, which is very real. He kind of just devastated me with that, Honestly, I hadn't really even ventured into that thought.
Well,
so
you can think about it that way. You can think about it that way. And that's
because that's the end game we want, right? We want these people coming over from these other chains. We want that money,
right?
But we need to be prepared for when they get here.
Well, sure, but what is the if it's an infinite game and not a finite game, then if we just work our mathematics, we can figure out formulas to mitigate the losses and to make gains.
Yeah, it's just going to be an ever-evolving landscape, you know what I mean? Especially with one day we're going to be pushing towards more decentralization, which is an even bigger opportunity for one of these people to come in here and own a bunch of the governance rights and make changes or maybe influence the game in ways that
Right.
benefit them but screw us over.
Okay, for instance, say you have a large entity come in and they own all that land and doing all this stuff. They may find that their presence there may make the game not as profitable. So then they're going to have to do something because the game is being monopolized. So that's being in a situation like that may be detrimental to the game. It may make it no fun. It may make it everywhere I go, it's Axie Infinity and this blows.
But if you're a shady actor coming from Axie Infinity and you're making money, are you going to give a shit?
Yeah, that's the point. That's the point. If we look at the two guilds established in Cornucopias, and I'm sure the others that are established in recent times, we actually give a shit about the game. We actually give a shit about the opportunity we've got here, right? A lot of these big gaming guilds on other blockchains, they absolutely knew the economics in Axie Infinity. They knew that was a massive, massive disaster waiting to happen. Did they once do anything? So let's just be under no illusion. I think that the guilds established in Cornucopias are unique in the sense that they actually do give a shit about the game and they want this game to be the best blockchain game, right? People coming in with 30,000 players, and again, the 30,000 players in those guilds, they don't give a shit about running around Solace in their bubble jet. They just want to put food on the table. This is reality, and that's why I think both guilds, or all established guilds, we need to get a pretty big foothold on the land assets because, not just for the available zones now, because if we've got the land assets, we can actually maintain our core values and support the game and put up a bigger defense for these, whatever they are, entities that don't give a shit.
Well, absolutely. One thing I wanted to tack on there real quick too is somebody's game theory, Stein, could be to tank Cornucopias. Maybe they come in here with the intent of ruining the ecosystem because they want to make Virtua or Sandbox or Decentraland more profitable. So part of that game theory could be, fuck Cornucopias, they're going down.
Right. Well, most definitely. Do you see Chris?
Didn't that happen on Cardano the other week when we was about to launch a stable coin? Wasn't there some strange attack on Cardano? Not everyone's got integrity in this world.
No, that's true. But we also have to look at it as maybe, the whole point of this discussion was to get knowledge out there about this game theory. And like I said, the discussion is not whether Axie Infinity is going to come in and destroy us or whether another entity. But if the discussion we're having today is on game theory and the mathematics of game theory and my little knowledge of it.
I mean, I feel like it still fits AI game theory to gain an advantage. If you can take over and tank your competitor, you gained an advantage. You use game theory to do it.
Right. But we can also use game theory as I looked into it more. When I first came in here, I was ignorant about the game theory as a whole. But if we can use it to our advantage to build up a community, if we don't have a large entity coming in, that would be great. But if a large entity comes in, we can also use it. Instead of being scared of the guy pushing all his chips in the middle of the pot, to use that game theory to say, yeah, I'm going to call, or yeah, I'm going to fold and stop my losses.
I totally and utterly get it, and I think it's a really, really good conversation. Today's conversation has actually changed a few of my ill-informed views. As I said earlier, I don't know a great deal about game theory or anything about AI. I just like talking, as most people know. But what this has also really confirmed for me today is there's a lot of variables that we don't know and that we can't control. And I really picked up on your concept earlier about game theory can be about damage limitation and about stop losses. And if our guilds, which I've alluded to earlier, we both hold the core values of the game to our heart. So game theory could actually be really beneficial to protect the game, actually, rather than to protect the bottom line, because there's these variables we don't know. And yeah, this has really got me thinking today. So thank you, Stein.
Yeah, and if protecting the bottom line, which is obviously the money, but if protecting the game, and if to protect the game will also protect your bottom line. So that's one thing we have to look at there too. You know, it doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be mafia knights. It doesn't have to be either or. It can be both. And if being both is more beneficial to both, then that's how it should be. If you can put it into a mathematical formula and talk about it, you know. So
absolutely.
That's why sharing these
see,
knowledge is what I wanted to do today. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to say, I very rarely say mafia or knights. You know, I think we're both OG guilds. You know, we were here at the start, and we've got really common core principles. So you know, it's been a really interesting conversation. But I don't see the challenge between our two guilds, and I think we'd always do the right thing.
Yeah, I just use that as a reference, you know, not that the mafia and the knights are fighting against each other. I'm just using that as, you know, I know the knights and I know the mafia, so I'm just using that as a structure, you know, as a talking point.
Wouldn't it be really interesting? Okay, if we plugged in all of these variables, right, into a game theory simulator or model or whatever, I don't even know whether it's what it is, but just imagine if we plugged in all of the things we know and all of the things we don't know. You know, I mean, everyone's the unknown unknowns are the biggest risk to anything. But wouldn't it be interesting if the game theory was, guys, why are you two guilds? That would be really hilarious. But no, I'm just saying, with all of these variables.
Well, if you don't plug in those variables, then you won't get them.
Yeah,
So,
I know, but those variables are ultimately what's going to make or break the game and make or break the guilds.
Yeah, I understand. Well, we got 5 more minutes, and Ninja, let's go with Ninja.
Yeah, hey man. I haven't been feeling well the last couple of days, so sorry I'm a little late today.
That's all right.
But you know, I've been listening in, and Moody and Fryer and Stein, you guys are doing a hell of a job. But you know, Moody, I don't really look at it as our two guilds as competitors. I just don't. Much for the same reason you do. We've been here since the very get-go. We both want the same things. It's not I want to kick your ass. No. You know, what we try to do in our kind of brainstorming meetings and all that stuff is try to look out 6 months, try to look out 9 months. You know, where are we now? What's going on with the build? And where do we think it's going to be? And, you know, those kind of things. And we've talked extensively behind closed doors, you know, about who we think are going to be the biggest threats to the game itself. You guys mentioned Axie Infinity. You know, I honestly think it's going to be some of these established money guilds. And you kind of alluded to them. You know, they don't prescribe to one game or another. What they prescribe to is go into an economy and just suck the life out of it. And you know, The biggest way we can protect that, at least at the start, is management, land management, asset management. I mean, I know you guys are planning to work into your plans another round of land. You know, I'm not going to talk in specifics, but you know, we've got 5 different projects in various states of design or planning, and it's not a competition thing. It's for the very reason we're talking today. It's you know, as things change with the build of the game, with the direction of the game, with delays or speed ups or the roadmap, we don't want to be at a point where our pants are down and, you know, our hands are behind our back and all that kind of stuff. We want to be ready. We want to be able to say, okay, you know, what can we do right now to help protect things? Oh, there's land. We have some assets. Let's go do it. You know, and it could change. It's going to change. We know that it's going to change. But I think our two philosophies are not too indifferent. I think we should just, you know, work toward the same goal, and you know, let's use the GA. I don't even know what the hell to call it anymore, since they won't even let us use their name. But let's work together as best we can.
Oh, thank you for the input. We are right on. I know we started a little bit late, but we're going to stop it at the same time. And thank you for the input on that, Ninja. Really helpful. I just want to thank my co-host Freiler for helping me with this daunting task of trying to talk about this subject today. I also want to thank KB and Moody for coming up. And I want to thank the Corn Mafia Guild for their space today on Twitter. My name is Stein, and I have my co-host Freiler, and we're going to be signing off. So I just want to thank everybody. Have a good night.